They look fine. They're posting. They're out with friends. They're laughing. Maybe they're already talking to someone new, and you're sitting there trying to hold it together, wondering how it's even possible that two people could walk away from the same relationship and end up in completely different emotional worlds. Because for you, it doesn't feel casual. It doesn't feel like something that just ended and you move on from. It feels like something that mattered, something real. And now you're left carrying all of it while they seem completely unaffected. And that's the part that messes with your head the most. Not just the loss, but the way they're handling it, or not handling it at all. It makes you start asking questions that go way deeper than the breakup itself. Did they ever love me? Was any of it real? How can someone go from being so close to acting like I don't exist? And if you're someone who feels things deeply, this doesn't just hurt, it destabilizes you. Because your brain is trying to make sense of something that doesn't add up. But what if the problem isn't that they're fine? What if the problem is that what you're seeing isn't actually the full picture? Avoidant attachment doesn't show up the way most people expect it to. And if you don't understand how it works, it will look exactly like indifference. It will look like someone who didn't care, who moved on instantly, who replaced you without hesitation. But that interpretation is too simple. And it's wrong in a way that actually keeps you stuck. Psychological research on attachment, starting with John Bowlby and later expanded by Cindy Hazen and Philip Shaver, has consistently shown that people with avoidant attachment styles don't process emotional pain in the same way as people who are more anxiously attached or secure. They're not just less emotional. Their entire system is built around managing emotional closeness in a very specific way. When something painful happens in a relationship, especially something like a breakup, an anxious person moves toward the emotion. They think about it constantly. They replay conversations. They try to understand it, fix it, feel it, make sense of it. It's overwhelming, but it's direct. Avoidants do the opposite. When the emotional intensity crosses a certain threshold, their system doesn't lean in. It pulls back. Hard. This is what's called deactivation. And it's not just a personality quirk, it's a psychological defense mechanism. There's research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology showing that avoidantly attached individuals actively suppress attachment-related thoughts and emotions, especially after relationship stress or loss. Not passively, not unconsciously drifting away, but actively pushing those thoughts out of awareness. So when you're sitting there, thinking about them constantly, wondering what they're feeling, they are, in many cases, doing the exact opposite. They are redirecting their attention away from anything that would make them feel the loss. That doesn't mean there's no emotion there. It means they are not allowing themselves to access it. And this is where people get confused, because from the outside, suppression looks exactly like absence. It looks like they don't care. It looks like they're unaffected. It looks like they've moved on without you. But those are conclusions based on behavior, not internal experience. A better way to understand it is this. Imagine both of you are experiencing the same emotional signal, the same loss, the same attachment rupture, but your system turns the volume all the way up. You feel everything immediately, intensely, all at once. Their system does the opposite. It turns the volume down. Not because there's no sound, but because they've learned that feeling that sound is unsafe. So instead of processing it, they mute it. And the reason they do that usually has nothing to do with you. Avoidant attachment develops early. Mary Ainsworth's work on attachment patterns in children showed that when caregivers are consistently emotionally unavailable, dismissive, or unresponsive, children adapt in a very specific way. They stop expressing need. They stop relying on others for comfort. They become self contained because they learn something very important very early. That closeness doesn't lead to safety, it leads to disappointment, rejection, or overwhelm. So instead of becoming more connected, they become more independent, but not in a healthy, secure way. In a protective way, they build a system where they don't need anyone, where they don't rely on emotional closeness, where they can regulate themselves by distancing instead of connecting. That works for them in childhood. It keeps them stable. But in adult relationships, especially deep ones, it creates a pattern. They can connect, but only up to a point. And when things get too emotionally intense, especially when there's conflict, vulnerability, or loss, that same protective system kicks in. So after a breakup, while you are feeling everything all at once, they are moving into protection mode. They detach, they rationalize, they create distance, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. They might tell themselves the relationship wasn't right. They might focus on your flaws. They might convince themselves they're better off. Not necessarily because those things are objectively true, but because those thoughts help them maintain distance from the pain. And here's the part that's hard to hear, but important. This can look incredibly convincing. They can genuinely seem okay. They can function, they can go out, laugh, work, talk to other people, even start something new, and from the outside it looks like they've processed it. But functioning is not the same as processing. Staying busy is not the same as healing. Distraction is not the same as resolution. And avoidants are very good at distraction. They throw themselves into routines, work, social activity, anything that keeps their mind occupied and away from the emotional weight of what just happened. Because as long as they stay in motion, they don't have to sit with it. And if you're watching this from the outside, especially if you're someone who attaches deeply, it feels like a slap in the face. Because you're doing the opposite. You're sitting with it. You're feeling it. You're trying to understand it. And it feels like you're the only one carrying the weight of something that involved both of you, and your brain starts trying to close that gap with meaning. You tell yourself they didn't care, that it didn't matter to them, that you were more invested, that you lost something real, and they didn't. But the reality is more complicated than that. It's not that they didn't feel, it's that they didn't feel it in the same way, at the same time, or with the same access. And that difference in timing is what creates so much confusion. Because for you, the pain is immediate, it's loud, it's unavoidable. For them, it's delayed. And this is where things start to shift, but not always in a way people expect. Avoidance can go for a period of time, appearing completely fine. Weeks, sometimes longer. Because their system is holding the line. It's keeping the emotions suppressed, managed, out of awareness. But suppression is not the same as elimination. Those emotions don't disappear. They get postponed, and often they resurface later when the distraction fades, when the reality of the loss sets in, when the person they were with is no longer present, no longer reaching out, no longer part of their daily life. Sometimes it's triggered by silence, sometimes by memory, sometimes by realizing that what they had is actually gone. And when that happens, it can feel like it hits all at once. But here's where you need to stay grounded. Just because their timeline is different doesn't mean the outcome will be what you want. A delayed emotional response does not guarantee reconnection. It does not guarantee they come back or that they suddenly gain clarity and fix everything. Sometimes it just means they feel it later, process it privately, and still don't have the capacity to show up differently. And this is where you have to be really careful not to turn this into hope that keeps you stuck. Because the most important part of this isn't what they're feeling, it's what you do with what you're feeling. Right now, it feels like you're the one losing, like you're the only one hurting, the only one affected, the only one who cared enough to feel the impact. But what you're actually doing, even though it feels unbearable, is processing. You're facing it, you're feeling it, you're moving through it in real time. And that is painful, but it's also what leads to actual healing. They might look fine, but looking fine and being fine are not the same thing. And your pain right now is not proof that you lost. It's proof that you're actually dealing with something real, and that matters more than how it looks from the outside.